In 1939, the United States Army was smaller than the Army of Portugal. That was a terrifying fact. We were a military joke. We had a few dusty warehouses. Our soldiers were training with wooden broomsticks because we didn't have enough rifles. We were a second-rate power watching the world burn. Washington built the bank. Lincoln hired the police, but we still didn't have the factory. Welcome back to our special President's Day history series. In the last episode, we talked about how Lincoln fought the fraud. Today, we're talking about the miracle that built the industrial machine. It was May 1940. The Nazis are rolling across Europe. France, supposedly the strongest army on the continent, collapsed in just 6 weeks. And in the White House, Franklin D. Roosevelt is looking at the numbers and is terrified. He realizes that if the war comes to America, we lose. Not because we lack bravery, but because we lack needed supplies and equipment. You can't just buy 50,000 tanks if there are no factories to build them. You can't just write a check for a bomber if the assembly line doesn't exist. FDR didn't need a general. He needed a builder. Enter our hidden character, a man who was arguably more powerful than the vice president, but who history has completely forgotten. Meet William Bill Knudsen. Knudsen wasn't a politician. He was a Danish immigrant who started out sweeping floors and worked his way up to become the president of General Motors. He was the king of mass production. He was the man who made the Chevrolet the most popular car in the world. FDR calls him to Washington. It's an awkward meeting. FDR was a liberal Democrat who hated big business. Knudsen was a conservative Republican who hated the New Deal. But FDR asked him one question. Bill, can you build me 50,000 planes a year? At that time, the United States was struggling to build 2,000. The number was impossible. It was a fantasy. Knudsen looked at the president and said, I can do it, but you have to let me rewrite the rules. Knudsen quits his job at GM. He gave up a salary of $300,000 a year. That is about $6.5 million in today's money, to work for the United States government for $1 a year. Imagine a CEO today giving up $6 million to work for $1. If you think we need more leaders like Bill Knudsen, leave a like on this video. He arrived in DC and found a procurement system that was stuck in the 1800s. The government was trying to bid on tanks the same way they bid on pencils. They wanted the lowest price. They wanted slow negotiations. Knudsen slammed his fist on the table. He told the generals, we don't need to save money, we need to save time. He realized that no company would build a massive factory for a war that might end in a year. The risk of bankruptcy was too high. Ford wasn't going to stop making cars to make bombers if it meant that they were going to go broke. So Knudsen and FDR invented a new instrument. It is a term that you see in today's contracts, but back then it was revolutionary. It was called cost plus fixed fee. They flipped the script. The government said to the industry, we will take the risk. We will pay for the factory. We will pay for the tooling. We will cover every single dollar of your costs, and on top of that, we will guarantee you a profit. It was an offer American businesses couldn't refuse. The result was the arsenal of democracy. Detroit stopped making cars completely. There were 0 civilian cars produced in the U.S. between 1942 and 1945. Instead, the assembly lines churned out the B-24 Liberator. Ford's Willow Run plant was a mile long. Raw iron went in one end, and a flying bomber came out the other end every 63 minutes. Knudsen didn't just buy weapons. He engineered a miracle. By the end of the war, the U.S. wasn't just outproducing Germany, we were outproducing the entire world combined. But this victory came with a side effect, a permanent one. To win the war, we had to create massive companies that did nothing but serve the government. We gave birth to the prime contractor. The giants you see today, the Lockheeds, the Raytheons, the Boeings, they trace their DNA back to Bill Knudsen's office. They are the children of that cost-plus agreement. Before Knudsen, the government was a customer. After Knudsen, the government became a partner. This is the system you work in today. When you see a massive indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity IDIQ contract, or you see the government funding research and development, that is Knudsen's legacy. He proved that the only way to protect the country is to keep the factories running. So we have the bank, Washington. We have the police, Lincoln. And now, thanks to Knudsen, we have the factory, FDR. We had built the most powerful engine of war in human history. It was unstoppable, it was profitable, and it was growing. But there was one general, a man who led this machine to victory, who looked at it and got scared. He realized that the machine we built to save democracy might actually threaten it. Join me in the final episode of this presidential history, where we meet the general, Dwight D. Eisenhower. I'm Jason Bortz. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.